Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. In today's podcast, I will be sharing with you another English paper piecing block that I have been working on. And as you can see, I am doing a little spinning, plying specifically. I have two singles that I am plying. They are wool. They are not part of my exploration into cellulose fibers. They are CVM wool that is from the same fleece that I was spinning during Tour de Fleece. I realized at the end of spinning in Tour de Fleece that I needed a little bit more yardage if I was going to do the sweater spin that I had hoped to do with the fiber I had spun specifically for this during a portion of the month of July. So that is what I am plying. I did want to try some this week's fiber that I was going to do with this, that was cellulose fiber, the plant-based fiber. It was going to be hemp, and I just really didn't want to rush through that. I wanted to take my time, and this week just did not offer much spinning time, partly because I spent some time in the kitchen, and partly because I spent some time with my nose in a book or an electronic version of it. But I did want to spin a little bit and chat with you a bit today about some of the things that I've been doing before I show you my English paper piecing block. It should, knock on some wood, be a shorter podcast than the last two that I've made. That is the goal, and I have a feeling we'll be able to meet that goal without any problem. So I figured I'd do some plying while we chatted because it keeps my hands busy and I can fill you in on the stuff that I've been doing. I will save the English paper piecing block for the end. If there is a need for chapters, I will put the chapters in. So let's just go ahead and get started. I had the opportunity, let's start with it. What interrupted my week and my plans. I had the opportunity to purchase some beef roast on a really good discounted price. I guess it was either end of last weekend or maybe early part of this week. Either way, I was able to purchase this roast on sale. And when I see these kind of really good sales, I like to take advantage of them. And I bring them home, and my husband and I break them down, and we make our own hamburger, our own ground beef. It can sometimes save us a little bit of money. Mostly it gives us a higher quality ground beef, we can control how much fat goes into the grind. It gives us a little bit higher quality, a little more control, and it does save us money because as a frugal individual, I will use all of the scrap pieces and pieces that I don't really, want to have it go into the fine ground, and I'll use that to make chili and stews and all the wonderful warm and comforting foods that when fall hits, I crave. So it's still a little on the warm side. I'm not quite ready to embark on chili just yet, but it is close. It is getting much closer. Our leaves are changing colors. As I set up the camera to record this podcast, right out the sliding glass doors across from where I'm sitting right now, there was a mother deer and her twins, and I will certainly show a picture of that as I'm describing it. So we've had, I think my husband's counted 5 or at least 5, maybe 6 or 7 young deer this year. They're almost entirely without their spots. And we know that there is some larger, at least one large buck in our area, because unfortunately we woke up to finding one of our, most of our small trees that we have planted in our backyard have fencing around them to protect them. But we had one that didn't. And sadly, it is now been broken in half. Obviously, the buck got its antlers caught in the tree, and trying to get free, it broke the tree. So, living with wildlife. But in addition to the deer this year, our standard living in the backyard groundhogs have been present, and we think there's 2 of them. We nickname them chunks because they are chunky. And there is one that I've been seeing out eating the different, what I'm not sure what grasses and such that they eat, but he has put on some serious chunk this autumn. So I'm hoping that means it's a good, that it's either that there's a really good amount of food for them to eat, or maybe they know we have a cold winter coming up. I'm crossing my fingers for a little bit of a cold winter. It'd be a nice change to maybe get a little snow this year. I'm not sure we received really any snow last year, but I do know that the deer, one of the things that they're doing, and the reason they like my backyard right outside my sliding glass door, is we have a pin oak tree, and it puts down quite a bit of acorns, small little tiny acorns. So they like to feed there, so I get a lot of, I get to watch them frequently from the windows. So it is fall. It is time to start thinking about sweaters and knitting again. And I had a dry spell, quite a dry spell, at least a month of no knitting. But I did pick up my knitting needles this past week, and I did get started on the 2 months of block of the month or square of the month that I've been working on. I did get started on those, so I'm hoping that is a change in the air, that I'm feeling a little bit better, and that the knitting is coming back into play as well. I keep looking out the window because I see the leaves starting to fall. We have a little bit of color change. We have some leaves coming down now on a regular basis, and I suspect that within the next week or 2, we'll get some really amazing color start to show up outside my windows. So those are, with the fall coming on, and with the having the opportunity to put away some ground beef, prepare for chili season. I also, with the roast beast, as I like to call it, that I did, I've developed a recipe, and I don't have exact measurements, so I don't have a recipe card to share. But I developed a recipe. One of the things my husband and I really like is we like a Southwestern flavored foods, very similar to the Tex-Mex, that if you're familiar with them, the different varieties of foods in the United States, it's popular spicy cuisine. And I've been trying to come up with a recipe to do shredded beef, because I really do like, and actually the first thing I wanted is shredded chicken. I wanted spicy Southwestern shredded chicken, and I did manage to figure out a way to do that. But I also wanted to have a good shredded beef, because when I do have the opportunity to purchase roasts, most of the time the price tag makes it to where I am buying the cheapest cut of meat I can. And that means I like to put it in the pressure cooker and cook it that way so that it gets nice and tender. And I've been wanting to come up with a very simple recipe to do it, because my husband loves it, I love it, and it's a great fast food on the weeks that I don't feel like cooking. It's a good thing to pull out if you have some frozen up, pull out and reheat, slap it inside a tortilla, and enjoy. So I came up with a recipe, and it's a really simple process. Now, for those of you that have followed me a while will know I use the instant pot version of the electric pressure cookers. I would imagine any would work, but it is an electric pressure cooker. Makes it so much easier than the old pressure cookers that I used to use, and easier. I find it easier to clean up. The whole works. So the trick is I take usually the cheapest cut of meat. In the case of chicken, I'll use chicken breasts simply because, it's usually I can get them boneless. But take a cheap cut of meat, I chop them up into, pieces about like that, chunks about that big. So maybe about 2 inches. And I chop it up, and in this case with the beef, I chop up the beef. I put it in the Instapot with salt and pepper and garlic and cayenne pepper. And the key is to certainly make sure you put extra spice. Okay. So I put all of that in it, and I cook it at high pressure for 30 minutes. Then I do a quick release. I drain off, keeping the liquid, I drain off and reserve that liquid, but I drain it off, and then I add to there, I'll take a tin of tomato, and it can be a 16-ounce or a larger. It's exact is not necessary to worry about. I take a can of tinned tomatoes. The kind that I use actually already have jalapeno in them, but you can just use regular tinned tomatoes, and you can add in a jalapeno. I then add in green chili that's already diced and canned, and it's usually like somewhere between a 2 and a 4 ounce can. Again, toss it all in. What I do with the tomato, my husband is not a big fan of tomato unless it's been processed into a sauce. So in this case, that actually is a good thing. I'll take the tinned tomato and the jalapeno, and you can, if you want to, throw in the green chili as well, and I'll process that up. I'll blend it up in a blender or a food processor. Onion, throw in chopped onion, that works too. And then like a half a cup of water just to make sure that there is more liquid to the tomato. Put that puree back in with the beef. I will add a little more cayenne because that's always good. And I will start the process, and I will process the now nearly shredded beef for another 10 minutes on high, and then I'll let it do a natural release of the pressure once the 10 minutes is up. So you have about a 40-minute at pressure total between the two processes. And I do it this way very specifically because I have found that if I cook the meat, pre-cook the meat for that 30 minutes at high pressure, then put in all that wonderful tomato and pepper and all of that to it, I don't have to have as much liquid, just enough not to scorch on the second process. And what ends up happening is you have this wonderful, thick, rich, shredded beef without needing to necessarily drain off a lot of excess liquid. And that's the key. You need to make sure that you have at least a cup of liquid going into the second process, but of that cup, it can be the tomato puree with a little bit of extra water, because I have found that tomato puree is not quite as burn proof as a thinner like tomato juice would be. So then I have my shredded beef, and it is ready to go into a tortilla. It is ready to be put on top of chips or even a salad in order to have a taco salad. And it is perfect for this time of year. It is perfect for this wonderful transitional time where it's not quite cool enough to really want to get into the chilies and stews, but certainly some kick, some heat, some intense flavor is well appreciated, because we are actually starting to get cooler evenings again. And I'm excited. We are at that point where I can leave windows open overnight, turn the air conditioning so that it's not, running or any of that. But it's cool enough actually that I can open some windows. The cats can listen to the chirping and the birds. And as long as we don't get a visitor from a skunk, we're good. So that's what I was doing. Little bit of recipe, little bit of cooking. And that meant I was in the kitchen for a good part of a day, doing all of the prep, all of the cooking, all of the packaging, everything up. And it was worth it, because it means I have more food ready to go, ready to just thaw out and use, rather than spending prep time in the kitchen every day. But it took its toll. And I decided that I was going to dive back into a series of books that I've been reading. I've been reading 2 short collections of cozy mysteries by an author named Hannah Reed is her pen name. Her other name is Deb Baker. And she has a couple sets of cozy mysteries. I've read the one that is the Queen Bee is one set, and then the other one is, it's something Scottish Highlands or whatever, but the Queen Bee one takes place in Wisconsin, and it's all about a person who owns her own shop and produces honey and helps solve murders in the on her in her free time. And the other one is a person who is a writer who has gone over to Scotland and ends up living at a friend's place that produces wool. That's how I found them, is suggested because of spinning. And she helps solve some murders over there. So that's what I've been doing, rather than spinning, rather than knitting. I've been doing it. And there's one more thing I've been doing. I have been totally going down the English paper piecing rabbit hole. This week I have been designing another autumn-inspired project that is done with English paper piecing. I am trying to have it something that I'll be able to share in pattern form. Something that I'm hoping to have up on the wall before we get too far into October. Definitely something that will be done by November. But I went down that rabbit hole. It has just over, I think it has 226 pieces that I'll be sewing together by hand, and then adding a couple borders on it with the machine. And I'm really looking forward to it, because it's autumn inspired. It's using some of my beautiful autumn inspired fabrics. I have some that have leaf patterns on them, bold orange colors, some fabrics that I've used in the past for wall hangings, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's a combination of English paper piecing, some regular piecing, and some applique when it's all done. And I will be looking forward to sharing that with you in the upcoming weeks, as soon as I have a little bit more of it put together. So that has been what I have been doing instead of spinning. But I do have an English paper piecing block to share. It is the 3rd one of my block of the week that I'm doing in order to make a small couch, comfy, curl up with a book and read quilt. Trying my hand at the English paper piecing. And the block that I have this week is it's an interesting one. And I will put a picture here to show it in a different colorway, so that you can really, in case, because I know these colors kind of blend together just a little bit. This is a very subtle palette. But this block's traditional name is called the LeMoyne Star. Now, I had a wonderful time looking up and looking at the history of its name, because I'd always seen it referenced as the LeMoyne Star. Very specifically, you have this kind of diamond shape pieces coming together in the center as a point. Whether it is individual pieces or if it's constructed by many other pieces to create that diamond, it's known as a LeMoyne Star. This lovely little diamonds put together into this shape. When I looked it up this time, I discovered it has a couple different names now. Specifically, the LeMoyne Star has been also written as the Lemon Star. And I read a little blurb that talked about it, and they they make the leap that basically thinks that someone heard it called the LeMoyne Star and thought it was being called the Lemon Star, because LeMoyne is a name, a surname. And so you may find this star available in different formats under the name Lemon Star as opposed to LeMoyne Star. But the name that it has more historically been known as is LeMoyne, and it's spelled L-E, capital M-O-Y-N-E. There we go. Spelling in public. So this one, I really wanted to do this one as the next block. It looks more complicated than it is. The real key, show the back because I know people enjoy seeing the back. The real key to doing this kind of thing, and it's fun because it's funny because I've been watching a number of other people who do the English paper piecing, and they keep saying, and I'm now understanding why they're saying it. At first, when I was listening to them and I heard them mention this, they didn't ever say why they were making this point. When you're basting your pieces, I kept hearing a number of them say, make sure you go in the same direction. So baste, 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 baste. Okay. The reason why that's important is on blocks like this. When you baste following a same rhythm of I'm doing this side, then up this side, then up that side, then down this side. Down at the bottom, your little dog ears, the part that hangs over, they will all point in the same direction. And when you start sewing them together, they will spiral around and it will lie flatter. So I've seen a couple different ways of sewing it together. Once you have, I've seen where you can just take those diamonds and sew one on each other and go all the way around. I've also seen many times, especially with the sewing machine, where you piece together 4 of these diamonds and 4 of the diamonds, and then you sew a straight line going across. I will tell you that in the ones that I've done, because I have a few others, I forgot to take my allergy medication yesterday. I am surprised I am not just completely sneezing and everything. Oh, and I'm covered in debris. But when I pieced this one, I have a couple other blocks that I've been piecing of these EPPs ahead of time that are in this sequence, but this one ends up being the one I wanted as number 3. So one of the things I've been noticing though is this, and I've seen where, you piece the 4 of them together and you piece the 4 of them together and then you lay them together and you sew across. And I have done that on the sewing machine in the past and I have not been happy with the result. When I tried it by hand, thinking, well, maybe if I did this by hand, I'm controlling everything, maybe I'll like that process more than the just going around in a circle that I've done in one of the other blocks, similar shapes, not the diamonds. what I found is that I prefer going all the way around, not make half and half and sew the two halves together. Oh, sorry. I have to remind myself not to cover my microphone with quilts and fabric. My husband told me in the last podcast that he didn't notice it that much. I noticed it when I listened to it. Every time I put the quilt over my microphone, the sound got quieter and quieter, especially when the quilt was folded over in many layers. So when you're piecing something like this together, it is something to kind of test out to see your own preference. Because for some people, doing it the 4 and the 4 and sewing 2 pieces together might work better for them. In my case, I found simply going around in a circle after having basted my diamonds all in the same direction, same pattern, the same rhythm and pattern, this side, this side, this side, then this side. After doing that, I actually think I prefer going around piecing them all one by one rather than doing half and half. I do have it laying flat. It does lay flat. I did with this one where I did do the top half and then the bottom half. The trick is starting when you're doing the sewing the 2 halves together. Don't start from the side and go across. Start from the center and go out. Start from the center and go out. It is an extra step, but you're controlling a little bit better, I think, the that little center area, so it will lay flat. I have now seen a number of people in different videos, different tutorials, both the stuff with the English paper piecing and stuff that I've watched in the past, that have talked about how sometimes it is better to actually do out from a center than try to go clear across for accuracy. One of the first times I ran into that was somebody when they were sewing in a collar on a shirt, believe it or not. They said, don't try to start and sew all the way around. Start from the middle of the back and do half and half. There's nothing saying that you can't break it into pieces, to break it into sections. And that's one of the reasons I really like the English paper piecing, is because that's exactly what we're doing. We're breaking it down into small sections and sewing them together, slow sewing, rather than trying to just zoom through it. There, of course, are tons of patterns out there that there is no reason not to zoom on the sewing machine and sew them together, and you're going to have really pretty good accuracy, and you're going to have good success. When I've tried to do the LeMoyne Star with the sewing machine in the past, I have certainly learned from trial and error how slowing down is your friend. So whether you're doing it by machine, and this block, by the way, as templates go, this would be a fabulous one for those of you that are trying this for the first time, trying this as a new thing. The LeMoyne Star is an interesting one. This one is one that you can sew together on the sewing machine, as in my specific templates here. The size of it, the shape of the templates, it is certainly one that you could do more traditional template patterns and English paper piecing. So I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the end product, but most importantly, I'm really enjoying this slowing down, and instead of having a ton of things to share, having a small, very happy group of things to share each week. It's certainly changing my perspective on constructing, enjoying the process, having that be the center focus more so than the end result. We learn from trial and error. We learn from watching other people's trial and error. In my last podcast, I talked about how there is a greater movement towards not trying to follow or be constrained by rules established in the past. There is a reason why we tend to want to use a nice, sturdy, even weave cotton fabric for quilting. That main reason is because it's crisp. It holds a crease very well. It holds up really well to the process of sewing it, to the process of using it. But when you start using other fabrics, when you start using other non-traditional, traditional being an interesting word, when you start using other fabrics, you may have more fraying, you have stretch, you may have and fray and stretch and different bias. That's why English paper piecing is nice, is because you can control the bias of these pieces that were not cut on straight of grain. There's a lot of things that will trip you up if you don't, or I should say, if you deviate from the standard, what we say now as traditional fabrics and techniques. But just because they may trip you up doesn't mean you can't try and learn and see what you like. And that's one of the things that I love so much about watching this new generation of quilters and knitters and craftspeople, is that many of them are learning from their own experience what they prefer, rather than letting someone tell them this is how you're supposed to do that. And to me, that is one of the most joyful things that I've seen in a very long time. Yes, there is a reason to seek out guidance and wisdom and information from people who have come before. There is so much value in that. But that value never outweighs our own personal experience and growth. If it becomes something that stops us from experiencing, stops us from growing, then it loses its value. So yes, we all do well in listening to the advice, hearing the advice and opinions and experience of those who've come before us, and embrace the kernels of truth, the wisdom that information can hold. But in equal measure, we benefit from trying it ourselves. Sometimes it means that what was once called a LeMoyne Star is now a lemon star. But we will find that, I'm sure, before the LeMoyne Star, it was probably called something else. So that is my podcast for today. That is my Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric and my message for you. I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead, that you get some time to maybe read, some rest. Maybe you'll try throwing some stuff in an Instapot or a pressure cooker or a crock pot or any of it and try to make up some spicy food of your own. But I'm really pleased with this block, and one of the great compliments that I received was my husband saw it as I was finishing it up, and he said, "Ooh, I really like that one." And all of you that that have husbands or significant others or sometimes parents will know that is like one of the best compliments in the world. When someone in your own world, in your own little circle says, "Ooh, I like that one." So on that, I wish you the best. Happy unwinding with fiber and fabric, and we'll see you next week.